Hello, I'm Anthony. Welcome to this demonstration of Arturia's latest offering, the Acid V. Modelled on the Roland TB303, released in 1981, this is one of the most famous hardware flops in history. The 303 vanished without trace after a very poor production run of 3 years because it was designed to be a bass synthesizer, and it wasn't particularly good at that. What nobody realised at the time is that it's an incredible melody sequencer and arpeggiator. And over the course of the late 80s and early 90s, this thing basically spawned an entire musical movement. This device featured on countless acid and hip-hop tracks and's gone on to become one of the most desirable and sought-after pieces of hardware in existence. Only 10,000 of them were made, so it's very unlikely you're ever going to get your hands on a physical copy of one, but fortunately we've got the plug-in to play with. For today's demonstration, I'm going to choose a single preset. I've chosen this preset Acid Breakbeats, and I'm just going to wander around the device, play with a few of the controls, and show you just how flexible this plugin is and how difficult it is to make it sound bad. So without further ado, let's get underway. I'm going to start off in sequence mode, which means I play a single note on the keyboard, and that determines the root note of a sequence that's played by the hardware. So you can see that we've got various offsets. Treat these notes as offsets rather than specific notes that are actually going to be played. I'm pressing a C on the keyboard, so everything's going to stay in sync. Here we go. So we have 3 rows of controls at the bottom. I'll demonstrate each of them in turn. Slide basically allows you to glue notes together. If the 2 notes that you glue together are at the same pitch, then it's effectively just making that note longer. If they're at different pitches, you'll get portamento between them. So now we're sliding down from the D sharp to the C below. This is a very long jump because we've got 2 octaves offset on this note. This high B that's being played up here is 2 octaves above the note that it's sliding to. It's a very long way to portamento. Let's pull it down. And we'll change this note to a D sharp so that we get some commonality between those 2 steps. Then we have vibrato on the bottom row, which basically adds a very fast pitch oscillation to the sound. Now at the moment, the speed of the vibrato is set to maximum. I'm going to slow it down so that you can really hear these notes flutter. Also bear in mind each note has a gate, in other words how long it lasts. But a little bit difficult to identify vibrato if the note's too short. So I'm also going to play with the gate length, which is over here, and as you can see at the moment, it's set quite staccato. So now you're getting the little trills, those little flutters on the high B and the B that we just pulled down by an octave on note 13. Then we can accent notes, really make them punch through the sequence. You can see a couple of notes have already been accented. I'm going to accent this B at the end of the sequence as well, and you'll hear it drive through a little bit more. The accent control is set up at the top of the interface. This determines how much that those notes kind of push through the rest of them. You really help kind of adjust the cadence of the sequence with accent, basically shifting the stressed beats around the sequence. Now then, let's introduce some modulation. We have 3 different modulation sources to play with. Each of them can be basically assigned to anything in the module, and this is the way we do it. This little line over to the right of modulation 1 turns into crosshairs if I hover over it with the mouse. If I pick that up and drag it onto the cutoff knob and let go, I've just assigned cutoff to modulation 1. If I move up to the cutoff knob and hover over the little dial, this is the easiest place I think to adjust the amount of modulation. You can also do it from this slider down below, they're both perfectly reasonable. So what we're going to do is apply some varying cutoff modulation to this sequence as it plays. Now at the moment the modulation's flatlining, so I need to introduce an amount. I can either do it from one of the presets down below, just introduce a nice simple sine wave, or I can draw my own modulation curve in by simply clicking anywhere in the window. If you ever see the modulation flatline like this and you're wondering why it's got this sharp angle, it's because you can set the amount of curve by clicking these little arrows. So let's get a nice simple sine wave to start with. Get this modulation curve to loop nice and slowly, and now you can see this little sphere indicating its current modulation point. Let's get going. I'm going to pull down the drive a little bit. This distortion is just over masking the LPF a little bit. There we go. Pull down the resonance, and now you can see the modulation being applied. Let's dial in some modulation to the resonance as well. This time I'll use modulation 2, pick up the crosshairs, drag them onto the resonance knob, and turn up the modulation amount. If you ever want to delete modulation, by the way, just double click the little icon and it'll disappear. Basically set it to 0, what you're effectively doing. Set the modulation to 0, it'll disappear. Let's drag it back in. And what I want for modulation 2 is to have a sawtooth basically pulsing every beat. Again, we set the mode to loop, and that was a misclick. I'll simply right click to delete that node. So now you can see the resonance pulsing up on every quarter note. At the moment we also have some additional modulation to the low pass filter cutoff. We have an envelope, so we have envelope modulation, which is the amount, and this decay knob determines the speed, the rate of decay of the envelope. It's effectively a second kind of hardwired modulation source. Let's have a play with these. Bring the drive back in. All of that was using the primary square tooth oscillator. Let's switch to the sawtooth and hear the difference between those. Far more harmonically rich sawtooth. Let's jump back over to the sequencer tab, and this time we're going to put it in arpeggiator mode. So instead of playing specific notes of the sequence, in arpeggiator mode, the notes of the sequencer grid are grayed out. They don't have anything to do anymore. Now the instrument is only interested in what notes we play. So I'm going to play a C and a G on the keyboard and watch C and G bounce on the sequence grid. So we've got all the same modulation, everything else is still happening. Toggling between sequencer and arpeggiator mode is a very fluid process, but everything else that we've set, the modulations, the controls in the primary interface, they're all exactly as was. So we get the same kind of DNA of sound. As long as I play a number of notes that divide nicely into my step count, this is going to loop around perfectly well. So if I go from 2 notes at the moment, I'm just playing effectively a power chord. I'll introduce an E flat and a B flat, so we're going to turn the chord into a C minor 7, and you'll hear those notes play over the course of the arpeggio. So that's just 2 notes. Here come the other 2. I'll take them away again. So it's incredibly easy to write musical phrases with arpeggiators because it follows all of the notes of the arpeggios that you play. We have a secondary oscillator, a sub-oscillator throbbing away in the background. Let's have a play with the different waveform types, and I'll bring in the volume so that we can hear that oscillator thudding away. Let's make it go really sub. There it is. Nice. Like I say, it's just so hard to make this thing sound bad. I really like those wobbling vibrato sounds as well. Double the speed of the arpeggio. Bring those gate times down so that we get some snap back in the sound. Now we'll play a 3-note chord, a C minor, so we're going to step out of the 16-step arpeggio, but it's still going to sound awesome. Here we go. As you can see, I've also brought the gate time down to make those notes really snap. There aren't many better ways to spend 5 minutes playing with the controls on this thing, dialing up an awesome sound, and away you go. I do like that square sub. Let's slow it down a bit and have a quick look at the effects units. So we have a fairly rich suite of effects to play with. This preset so far has a multiband compressor and a delay. Let's bring in a chorus. Each effect that we choose, you can jump into the presets and you're going to get presets specific for that effect type, so it's really easy to dial in a sound very quickly. Who doesn't love a flanger? Let's have a go. Jet flange. Just redlined there. Sorry, flangers make OBS redline like nobody's business. What a great sounding tool. Hope you enjoyed the demo. Lots more to play with this one, but that should hopefully have given you a good flavour. Thanks very much for watching. Please hit like if you enjoyed it. I'll see you again. Thanks very much.